So we are, as Mom Biz Boss members, we're decided to collaborate and utilize our services and our time to make just efficient use of our time. Anita, okay, thanks, Anita. So again, my name is Rose Allen, and I'm with Creative Social Solutions, and we are a consultant company looking to educate others on how to advocate in the education system. And so we're teaching women how to use their professional skills in advocacy. This project is a collaboration that Anita and I have decided to utilize both our small businesses and join them together to help parents advocate for resources for their students. So you see the title is called Walking Together in Sisterhood. So it's talking about, how we can leverage the relationship between sisters and in the world of advocacy. Anita will introduce herself as well.
Yes, I am Anita Prendergast. I am the Good Mom Coach, and I'm so excited that everyone is here on a Friday evening. I don't know about you, but it's a rainy Friday here, and I'm just glad that you were able to join us. I have a Good Mom Village on Facebook, private group. Go ahead and join that, and it's just about us supporting one another as good moms, as the good moms that we all are. And I help good moms make motherhood easy.
So the problem that we're here to address this evening is that every 26 seconds, a student drops out of school, and we knew as early as third grade. So one of the things that we're really passionate about is how do we help students who are dropped out or who prevent them from dropping out. That's 7,000 students a day. And it impacts them individually, it impacts their family as well as society. The individual impact is to causing them to have lower earnings. And so as they graduate or they matriculate out of school or end up going into employment, they don't have the same earning potential as others who have graduated. So it impacts them individually, as well as it affects the family. One of the things that it does to the family is it creates a cycle of dropout. You will get the slide along with the recording. So if for any reason we're having problems, there's a storm. So if we're having problems, you will get the slide. But you can go ahead and advance to the next slide. This slide talks about how it impacts the family. It talks about the financial strain that when you have someone who hasn't graduated and they're a financial strain on the family because now they're not able to make a living wage. They're making a low they're not making a living wage, which is probably almost twice as much higher than the minimum wage. Intergenerationally, when you have a student who has not graduated and they have children, their children are more likely to have academic challenges. So in order to break that generational cycle, we need to make sure that we intervene and prevent them from dropping out. Next slide. In society, the economic impact of it is that over the course of their lifetime, over $300 billion are $337 billion because of wages and taxes and stuff that does not come into economics because of them not earning the money. So it affects society as well. They're more likely to be incarcerated because of, when you have less opportunities, you don't make wise decisions. And they also utilize more social services, the food stamps, welfare, and things like Medicaid. Next slide. So the next section, Anita is going to talk about the barriers to family engagement.
Right. So this section, because we say, okay, like Rose said, we know by third grade that these kids are going to drop out of school. So, and there's so many resources that are out there. So why aren't the parents or why aren't these families taking advantage of them? Well, there are barriers to engagement. And some of that include the practical barriers, such as the time, schedule, transportation, childcare, and the cost of the programs, right? If you think that, okay, well, if you're working a 9 to 5 job and then you had to come home and cook and then you need to help with homework, where do you find the time to do that? So that's a barrier. And also is embarrassment, right? If you had to put your child in a special program, what's wrong with your child, where you see the Facebook posts where all these kids are getting straight A's and they're going to all these Ivy League schools and this and that. And you're thinking, well, what's wrong with my child? Why do I'm embarrassed to say that they need extra help? So it's these expectations that we put on ourselves, that other people, family members put on us. Sometimes we feel like if we go to these agencies, then what's going to happen if I'm really feeling depressed or something like that? You may feel like they might try to take your kids away or try to label you as a bad mom or something and you need help. So, which as moms, we all know that we all need help. You're only as good as the resources you have. So, and also institutional barriers. Sometimes you feel like the organization is not welcoming to you. I know sometimes when I take my kids anywhere where it's like I'm their parent, whether it's to the doctor's office or to some type of program, I feel like I have to dress a certain way or else I'll be judged. It's basically, sometimes what you wear, your language, the color of your skin. So a lot of these times, this is what the families are dealing with as far as family engagement. And yeah, and the parents, as you can see, the attitudes, parents, they feel blamed for their children's problems. So they feel like I have to work and I'm not spending enough time with them. So then they start to feel guilty and it's their fault. So they're, embarrassed to reach out for help. And so this comes to what I was saying as far as being good moms. I am the good mom coach and I help other good moms make motherhood easy. And one of the ways that I do that is through my Each Sleep coaching system. Now, when I was young, when my kids were younger, I was full of energy. I loved being a parent and it just came easy to me. I had the resources, I reached out, I helped other parents. It wasn't until I started my own business that everything fell apart. So I went from feeling like an Energizer bunny where I would collapse like this Energizer bunny is until I went through this system that, and I found my supportive environment. I found support from my village. And one person actually said, Anita, you don't need to have that Energizer bunny energy. You can just find a different type of energy. So then I started thinking of my energy as less of go, go, go and energizer and more of a nice natural energy like this amethyst stone here. And that's when everything changed for me. So I was able to manage expectations better, ask for help, and then hold each other accountable. And sometimes the accountability came on me. And like I said, find this supportive environment. So with networking, I was able to meet people like Rose that I didn't know existed to help with advocacy for your kids with who need help in school, which I needed at the time, right? And so you surround yourself with this supportive environment is very important. And then for the why, you put your self-care first. And that is what I coach mostly in my in the Good Mom coaching program.
Okay. So if you heard Anita talk about the importance of coaching. And one of the things that they said is that family engagement is very important to the process. And it's like one of the highest indicators in student success is family engagement. One of the challenges is like when Anita was describing her situation is that we are engaged parents and we're still overwhelmed. We are engaged parents. We are two income parents. We mother and father parents, and we're still overwhelmed. So how can we be engaged, be successful at our engagement, even though we're busy, we're married, we're working, we have all these activities, and then your child is struggling. So how do we manage all of this? Because engagement is important. Can you go to the next slide, Anita?
Yeah.
So what we have decided to do, I'm sorry, that's Anita's contact information.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. That's okay. That's Anita's contact information. Like I said, you will get the slide. Next slide.
This is what I was looking for.
That's
I
fine.
will put the link in the chat so if you want to learn more, then you have it.
Yes. But what Anita does is that she does the life coaching part to help you manage your expectations. She does all that part. But what we were thinking about was how can we strategize and use, look at the barriers. So by trade, I'm a business analyst. And as a business analyst, I look at the requirements, I look at the goal, and I help develop a strategy to address your goal based on your priorities, your constraints, and whatever limitations you may have. So we did the same thing with this strategy. We said, well, we are engaged parents. We have these barriers because we have to work. We have all these different barriers that we face. We're overwhelmed. So how can what resource do we have at our disposal that we can use to create a strategy to get our children the success that they need? And the answer was aunties. So for me, the part that I am going to address in this equation, while Anita will help with the overwhelmness of the mother, the busyness that help deal with that part, that's the emotional connection and trust part. My goal is to make sure that that I equip the aunties with what they need. Nobody loves a student and a parent as well as an aunt. And in my life, like Anita was talking about, she was successful as a mom. I was most successful as an auntie. My nieces and nephew call me the best auntie ever. And it's because there's an emotional connection and trust that I have with my nieces and nephew. Mentors are great, but sometimes it takes kids time to warm up to a mentor. And so, but they already know their aunt. And then the mom trusts the aunt. So the connection and the trust is already there. The objective perspective. Everybody who has a sister or a friend, so the aunties can be either your best friend or it can be a sibling. But that auntie, there's that person that you trust to give you objective perspective. When someone else tell you, look, you're wrong, or look, you need to do this, you might take offense. But if it's already somebody you trust, you don't mind looking at their perspective. So it's more easy for you to digest that. Less parental pressure. When you're an auntie, you can love the kids and you can even tell them some rough stuff, but they get to go home. So that relationship that you have with your that less parental pressure allows the child to receive what you have to say better. So that's one of the advantages of being an auntie. The flexibility. As an aunt, I get to say what I can and cannot do. A mom don't get to choose. So I have way more flexibility as an auntie, especially since my kids are grown. I'm an empty nester. I have more time on my hand where my sister or my niece and nephew are still raising their kids and trying to manage their family. Bridge between generations. This one was funny. As an aunt, you don't look at things the same way as a parent, even if you're in the same age bracket, because the risk is less. And I know it's not, it's still risky for your child to misstep, but you don't take it as personal as a mother does. So the relationship that you have with an auntie is very is an asset in advocacy. So what we decided to do, well, what I've decided to do in my business is to focus on aunts, get aunts equipped to advocate for their niece or nephew's education. Next slide. Is there a question in the chat? Oh, yes. Okay, go ahead. So best auntie ever. So this is the campaign that we're embarking on. We're talking about how to be the best auntie ever. We're aunts advocating for academic support. As you can see, we said that we're teaching aunts the skills that they use to advocate and navigate community and school resources. A lot of aunts are professionals, women who already have business skill, have analytical skills, have project management skills, have communication skills that they use in their profession. Those skills are transferable to academic advocacy. Those skills are the same skills you use when you sit at the table and you're trying to navigate and get the resources you need. Being very strategic is a skill that is very much utilized when you're listening to someone and you know your niece and nephew. So you have that perspective that if you went and paid somebody to do it, they would just based on what they read, but you know that child personally. Also, and being an auntie, um, you don't mind spending your time, your money, and your talent on your niece and nephew. The market is saying that aunties spend more money than grandparents on gifts. They spend more money and more time taking them to special events. So if we have nieces and nephews who we're willing to spend time and money and our talents on, we can do the same thing as it relates to their education. So the question is, how can you help? So the campaign has started this week. This week was Best Auntie Ever week, between professional aunts with no kids, and I think it was today is Wednesday was Best Auntie Ever day, and professional aunts with no kids are celebrating on Sunday. So in the future, we will have an annual event that celebrates aunties. But from year to year, what we want to do is educate aunts on how to advocate for their niece and nephew. So what you can do to support us in this effort is either schedule a consultation for your niece or nephew. If you have a nephew or niece who got kept back last year, because so many kids are getting kept back and people don't know how to prevent that. Retention is not a good strategy for intervention. If they didn't teach them last year, what's the chance they're going to teach them this year? So just keeping them back is not necessarily, it's not a research-based strategy for addressing the child's need. So if you want to schedule a consultation to talk about how you can support your niece and nephew, my contact information is on the last slide. You can refer a client. I have several parents from out of town that are referring me clients that are their relatives. So I found that the referral business is probably going to be my primary business. So if you have heard of someone that says, hey, my child is struggling, or you can even see somebody's facial expression. I had a niece that every time I talked about my daughter graduating, she would look sad. And they were supposed to graduate the same year. And I went and had a sidebar conversation and asked her, and she said, Auntie, I'm not going to graduate on time. We got into move into action, found out, audited her file, found out what programs is in her school, transfer her to the alternative school. Not only did she graduate, but she graduated with honors within that school. And so she went from not being able to graduate, but feeling successful because not only did she graduate on time, but she was also supported for her work ethics. And if I had not asked her as her aunt, she wouldn't have graduated on time. So, if you know someone is struggling, speak up, let us know that our kids are out there struggling. Remember, this is every 26 seconds, a kid is dropping out, and we knew as early as third grade. They're using third grade reading scores to tell whether a student is going to graduate. They're using third grade reading scores to tell whether we're building prisons. So why we can't use third grade reading scores to advocate for our niece and nephew? And the next other thing you can do is you can sponsor a family or sponsor a child. The assessments that I like to use is Linda Mood Bell, because what I found was reading the psychological evaluations were too much for me to try to understand. I'm not a psychiatrist, so trying to read that and decipher the evaluations that they were providing to the parents, I couldn't do that. It was too technical for me. So I use Linda Mood Bell assessments to just get an understanding of the strengths and weaknesses of the child. For $149, they'll do your assessments. If you give them my name, Rose Allen, and tell them that I sent you, they will give you an $800 assessment for $149. I do not get any money from that. I just use the data that help you understand your child's academic need. Donation. So you can go out to Creative Social Solution Specialist, my website, and you can donate to the efforts that we are embarking upon with the Best Auntie Ever. I do have a nonprofit side of my business because I want to help the least of these. So monies that are raised as part of my nonprofit will go to sponsoring other families, and so that we can advocate for them so their children can get the resources that they need. The next slide, I think, is my contact information. Because you registered, you will get a copy of the audio. Feel free to not only listen to it, but share. And you will also get the PowerPoint. Okay, what's the question? I see a question. What resources do you have for young adults with disability? Help them successful post-high school, employee referrals, etc. So my process applies for any age from elementary all the way through young adulthood. And the reason why, because it's a project-based plan. So I do student-centered planning. So if you have a student that in college and they're talking about either college or employment, the process is still the same. I assess where they are, what their needs, what their strengths, their interests, their weakness, and then I help them identify the resources that they need. If they have a disability, once you go from high school to college, it goes from IDEA, ADA to ADA. You don't get IDEA anymore, and they need to understand that process. ADA, which is the law that governs disability, applies not only for college, but also applies for employment. And they need to understand and be able to advocate for themselves. Part of what I do is once you develop a plan for your child, then we can do asset resource mapping, where we can identify people who care about what your child needs are. Sometimes it may be a special program. If you look just what they care about, and then who care about the thing that they care about, that's how you do a match. But it's like gap analysis, where I'm looking at the gap. This is the need, this is the desire, and what's the gap, and we plan to address the gap. So resources are available, and the processes can be done virtually. So you don't have to be in the state of Georgia, because this is governed by federal law. ADA and IDA are federal law. There is some research you have to do for state-specific law and for organizational constraints and policies and procedures, but federal law is the same regardless of where you are. So, and everyone has to comply with the federal law. So the process is always the same. I focus on kids from 0 to 26. And we also doing some prenatal stuff, because you can tell prenatally there's some things going on with lead and different things that cause developmental disabilities. But that's more advocacy. But we go from 0 to 26. So we can go older because the process is the same, but our special interest is 0 to 26. Are there any more questions? I know this is a lot of information. Anita, is there anything else you want to share?
I was going to ask the same thing, if there are any questions, but if you would all take out your phone. I know you might be on your phone, but if you're on your computer, if you can scan this QR code. If you're on your phone, then I dropped the link in the comments. If you would go ahead and click on that link, because Rose and I would really like your feedback on this presentation to see if you found value in it, or what you wish topics you wish you would have talked about more, or we could elaborate more on, just because we really want to support parents as much as possible and their kids. And I love what Rose was saying as far as retention is not the answer, right? I went through a similar situation where if it not was for my networking, that I would not have known to fight for these different services for my son. And he ended up going into a different type of school and was really successful in that way. So that's sort of what I do, as well as the Good Mom Coach, right? We're only as good as the resources we have. So I, like Rose, I get those resources for you. I send people to Rose. She might send people to me. And the thing is, those barriers that sometimes parents face, where they feel like they can't go to anyone else because of stigma, or because they're afraid of, some other event might happen, whether it's they're getting left back, or just the stigma of it. Just to know that did you know that there are like parent coaches out there? Have you ever heard of such a thing? I know when my kids were young, I'm like, a parent coach, what is that? But I've actually gone to an event, and the difference between the parents who felt confident about their parenting and the ones who were still kind of in that struggle mode was they got the resources, they got the help, they went to therapy, they found a coach, they found resources to help not only their kids but themselves. So I encourage you to share this information and to let us know what other questions you may have.
So I see that there's a question in the chat about what resources do you have for young adults with disability to help them be successful post high school, employee referrals, etc.
As far as for high school kids, what I do is I work more with the parents. So I would find resources for them. Let's go back to where I said make motherhood easy. I take them through these steps and I say, what are your expectations? Is it that you're expecting your child to go off to college, but that's not what they want to do? So we examine that and see what resources that I can provide to help them help their kids. And then just asking for help, asking and holding each other accountable and having that supportive surroundings. Just I take them through this list. And also the one that I really like is the self-care, because I teach how to communicate using positive touch. So I teach techniques to really that parents can connect with their children through touch, because that's one method of self-care that we neglect once our kids pass a certain age, and it's so needed because that's the way they're heard. It makes it communication so much easier for them. And so I teach that. And then for the teenagers, I teach the self-care as a teenager because it has to start early. So did I answer that question?
Anita, I'm gonna add on to what you're saying. So my process is more is technical. So for me, it's about doing a person-centered plan with your child. It's really getting to know your child and knowing where they are. Because in order to remember, we're using project management skills. So in order for you to know what programs and resources that are available, you got to first know where your child is. We basically create an academic profile of your child and where they are, what their strengths are, what their desires are, what their weaknesses are. And then we use that and be creative. That's why my business is called Creative Social Solution. We're creative on how to make that happen. So if you have a child that is passionate about, I'm trying to think of one that they're passionate about, let's just say something creative. I'm going to use my niece, my niece. My niece, she's in the middle school, and transition starts at 8th grade, you guys. So they should start planning for transition the 8th grade year for your child. So if your child is in high school, they should have a transition plan. If you're not familiar with the transition plan, that's where we need to get started. If your child is in college, you still need to be using that transition plan. That transition plan really should be updated every year to say how well your child is doing, what are new interests, what did you learn? So for each one of my children, including my niece now, she is she has cerebral palsy. She chances are she won't be able to read. But what I've learned about her is she loves technology. So, and she is, although she can see, she's classified as legally blind. So this summer, we took her to she did summer camp in visual impairment. So you got to get into your community, the community that fits your child best. And I believe in what they call universal design is what they call it in special ed. It's like you find something that is designed for one thing and then you use it for something else. So although she's not blind, she's classified as blind, so she can use those resources. And I know in the state of Georgia, and I think this is federal, there's a lot of money for four things right now: deaf, hard of hearing, blind, autism, mental health. So if you hit, and dyslexia is the fifth. If you have one of those, there are resource and fundings out there for it. You just have to find a community. And that's what I help you do. Find out how to take your particular child's profile and match it up to what resources are out there and what your child's desire is. Because it has to be student centered. Riley loves, and she's okay, her mom's okay with me using her name. She loves technology. We've been using her phone. She knows how to go and say a message using her phone. She reads a message, and she's been practicing with me, her mom, and her dad. So technology is where we're going to hit them next year. We're talking about when school start. She says she don't want to do adaptive PE anymore. She has strong advocacy skills. So we're utilizing that. She says she don't want to do in PE anymore. So we're going to go and tell them she don't want to do adaptive PE anymore. Because if I can get her to see that we listening to her, guess what's going to happen to her self-confidence? It's going to go up. So now I got her on my side because I listened to her. Her mom, I just sent my niece a text because now they're talking about post-secondary. The post-secondary program is having a meeting. So I'm going to go to that meeting with her mom because I'm the auntie. So I'm going to go with my niece to this meeting for her children. And this is talking about when we're 5 years ahead. We're talking about when she graduates from high school, minimum of 5 years ahead, because she can stay in school till she's 22. But we're talking about college. So it's all about understanding the vision, understanding the goal, creating objective, all that planning stuff that you do in a business setting. We take those same skills and apply them to advocating for your niece and nephew.
Okay, Rose, there are a couple of questions in the chat.
Okay.
The first one is Moet. She wants to know what resources would both of us suggest for educators to support in this process, especially at the high school level.
For me, I think educators need to learn MTSS, multi-tier systems of support, and person-centered planning. But there's an article that I share with educators about how to advocate without losing their jobs, because advocacy is a tricky thing for an educator. So you really need to utilize, how to be advocate without losing your job. Because if you lose your job, you can't help anybody, and you affect your family. So I think that's probably the number one thing: how to advocate without you losing your job. But also learning these skills. You then are putting yourself in a role as an auntie to these children in your school. So learn how to advocate. But number one, knowing how to advocate without losing your job. Number two, learn how to advocate as an auntie.
Right. If I may chime in too, I'll just say, as more of Rose, she does more of the technical part of it, and I work more with the person. So I can say that as a teacher, what I would encourage the teacher to do is to practice that self-care part of it, because when you do that and when you lead from the heart, then you're able to find those resources. You're able to reach out, and you're able to see that child in a different way. So really practice and teach these type of resources to the kids as far as breathing and those type of things, so to reduce stress, because sometimes the kids are so stressful when they get to school that they can't learn. So if teachers can start with that without putting more burden on them, where they have to find specific things for specific kids, and talk to their PTA. That's what the PTA is for, and make sure that the PTA is having people come in with different types of resources, have government resources, personal resources, coaches, different angles, because kids need different things. And I don't think that should always fall on the teacher, because they have so much more that they have to deal with. But making that classroom a more conducive to learning is one big step in that. And Rose, there's another question. Antoinette wanted you to elaborate. Help with young adults 21 to 26 that are not in college but want to go into the workforce and have a full life in spite of the disability.
Okay, so if you're there, so when the process is the same, but the organizations are different. So when you're talking about post-secondary outcome for college, you also have post-secondary outcome for military, because some kids can go in the military. You have post-secondary for employment. Georgia Vocational Rehab is one of the organizations that would, in Georgia, would be, and across the state, each state has a vocational rehabilitation center. So, but Georgia is the Georgia Vocational Rehab. They can assist you with that. Also, WIOA, Workforce Innovation Office of, what's the A stand for? But it's WIOA. They have a center where you can go in and you can get assessed, and they'll assess you to see, again, you're always looking at you're creating a baseline. What is your profile? What are your needs? And then what is the job going to expect you to do? And you have to teach them how to advocate for themselves. So that is very important. Again, regardless of what environment you're in, the skills are always the same. You got to advocate for yourself. You got to know how to ask for help. You have to know about time management and all those things. So the process is always the same. It's just the organization who care about. I always ask who care about that particular thing. So if you have a child who's 21 to 26, not in college, they just want to go in the workforce, you still need to understand what their strengths, interests, and constraints are. You still need to know that. And then you need to match them up with a job. But if there's a gap in what's required of them and what they can do, we got to find somebody to fill in that gap. Somehow we have to fill in that gap. And so I hope that's answering the question a little bit.
Right. And can I add also that it's the easy system as well. It works for adults. It's not just for moms, it's for young adults too. What are their expectations? Sometimes they may think that you expect so much of them that is overwhelming to them. So teaching these techniques, examining these expectations, where do they come from? Are they real? Are they valid? Are they intentional? Do they fit you? Do they suit you? And have them work through those issues, and then really finding that support system. If they need to do a technical school or learn a trade, or maybe they will say, okay, well, I want to get to this point, so maybe I will do a little bit of school. Maybe they just don't want to do school, and just to make them feel like that's okay, and they will succeed with whatever decisions they make.
It's about filling in the gaps. So let's just say they wanted to be a barber, and their apprentice who allow that you can go in and you just about matching it with someone who would meet them at their point of need and actually educate them to that level. So I would go and say, okay, who's a barber? They care about disability, that will be patient and understanding. And so I would start looking at my network and then to the family's network to see any barbers we know. So it's always about who do I know that care about that? I always ask that question because those are the people that are going to be more compassionate and more understanding to the needs of the child with a disability.
And there's always someone who is working on that issue. You think you're the only one or your kid, there's always someone who say, okay, I want to hire kids with ADHD and to work as, there's always something. So to work with someone like Rose, who knows a lot of people, we network together, so we know a lot of people, and there's always a resource out there.
Yeah. Facebook is my friend, LinkedIn is my friend, but it's really about thinking outside the box. Had a kid who was in trouble at Tuskegee. I didn't go to Tuskegee. I didn't even go to HBCU. I went to whatever they call it, the other schools. So I'm like, who do I know that went to Tuskegee? I called my friend who went to high school with me, who went to Tuskegee, told her she has a child with special needs. So we connect on multiple levels, told her what was going on. She was a cheerleader at Tuskegee. So she knew this person and she knew that person. We was able to get that child what they need through the, how they say 6 degrees of separation. Somebody I knew know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody. And it's always on that level that the opportunities open up when you know somebody, because it has to be a level of care that's going to make them answer the phone call. It has to be a level of care that's going to make them follow up. It has to be someone you feel comfortable following up, even if they forget. And that's why the aunties are so important, because that connection that exists is something that is not something you're paying for. It's through their passion, and their commitment is deeper than monetary, and it's longer than what you monetarily can afford. Even the data says that middle class people, wealthy people pay for things. Middle class people use their relationship. So you got to use your, unless you got money to pay people, and to get an advocate is $1,000 retainer for one meeting. So what we're doing is we take those same funds and we see how we can break it down to teach you how to advocate. Unless you can afford to pay somebody every year 4 meetings a year, because progress monitoring is 3 years, and then you get the final report. Then you get the final report. Then that's 4 years of advocacy. Do you have that much money to pay for an advocate? But and it doesn't stop in high school. It goes all the way into adulthood. So can you pay that for multiple years? If you can't pay that for multiple years, you're going to have someone in your network that learns how to advocate and come alongside to make sure moms who are busy and overwhelmed have the support they need for their nieces and nephews.
All right, so you guys, it is 7:16. I think we did a good job on time. Was there any other questions? We had some love in the chat, Rose. It says, thanks for this valuable information. And that's Natalie says that. And Antoinette says, thank you, ladies, for the response. It was insightful about 21 to 26-year-olds. Thank you, Antoinette.
Well, thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciate you supporting us. Thank you, Moet, for the collaboration. If you see that this is something that you want to do, please reach out to Anita and I, so that we can be assistance to the families that you know. We really want to make sure that the next school year is very successful for our students. And planning is key. Planning is very key to what we're planning to accomplish.
Yes, absolutely. And before you guys start to jump off, I would just want to invite you to my Moms and Mimosas, which is happening right after this, live on Facebook. Okay. You don't have to have mimosas. I'll probably have like sparkling water or something, but it's just to further this conversation and to talk about moms or parents. Do we still have, yeah, Vince is still here. So, so parents who are doing their business and also parenting, like how do you mesh those two? How do you balance those two? So we're going to talk about the ins and outs and ups and downs of that.
Can I speak to Vince right quick?
Uh-huh.
Vince, there are fatherhood groups too. There's a organization called Iron to Iron that I'm affiliated with. And whenever I have a father that needs to talk about things that are unique to the fathers, Johnny Brown from Iron to Iron is someone that I refer fathers to often, because, men don't always want to be in a room of women. Sometimes They want to have other men, and these are men who care about their children, who care about, the needs of their family. They're passionate about education. And so if you, it's called Iron to Iron. Johnny Brown is the leader of the organization. So we can help you. We focus on us, but we don't eliminate anybody. But we do have supports that to talk to not only fathers, but grandparents as well. So my primary client is aunts, but I won't turn anybody away. I'll make sure that there's somebody who can help you with whatever questions you may have.
And the same with me. I am the good mom coach, and I work with moms because dads, I don't understand what they do. My husband, he does something with the kids and it works for him. But for me, I'm going crazy. Like, what did he just say, or what did he just do? But it works for him. So my focus is on moms, but there is a whole network of parent coaches that focus on dads, couples, single parents, co-parenting, all of that. So just reach out. Like I said, whatever situation you think is unique and like no one's ever heard of it before, between Rose and I, we can find someone who can help you.
Right. And we have a Mom Biz Bosses who we're affiliated with, and we post questions there. I had a parent who was dealing with a child who she felt was being sex trafficked, and we were able to contact someone within a Mom Biz Boss group who had who actually worked for that and was able to get us in contact with the FBI. Glad to say that that child was in Paulding County. That child is back home. So we really have connections of people who care about these different topics that people face. And you say, well, how does that relate to education? Guess what? She missed school. It's going to affect her education. So, this is a mom. So we posted it in the chat, and I got 2 messages of people who were telling me, have them call me, have them call me. And so we were able to do a personal referral that really allowed the mom to know that we were there and supported her. Every child don't come back home, so we were very happy that she was able to come back home. And there are ongoing supports that this family would need, because that's a very traumatic experience. So just knowing people that care, and we also a member of Elizabeth Baptist Church, and we prayed for her too. So all the services that we have, and all the resources that we have are to make sure that our children are successful.
All right, so we're right at the 7:21 mark. Are there any other questions or comments? So I think we can close out, Rose.
All righty. Thank you, guys. I'm so excited that everybody showed up and really supported us. I can't wait to see what we do next. So you will hear from us through and get a copy of the recording as well as.
Absolutely.
Any other questions?
Remember 7:30 Facebook Live, Moms and Mimosas. Are you coming, Rose?
Yeah, I'll be there.
So we're going to, once we log off here, I'm gonna go. You guys can go stretch and go grab some water. Like I said, I actually have a little juice, so it's a mocktail. It's not necessarily mimosa, and then we'll just continue this conversation, bring some other parents in, and you'll get to share what you do. If you're a self-employed, if you're a business person, entrepreneur, then you can put your information there, and then just talk about how do you balance being an entrepreneur and a parent. Okay, so I hope to see you there.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Anita.
Okay.